is greater than. Somewhere at the bottom of the Atlantic, a dinner table is still set. The glasses are still standing. The silverware has not moved in 113 years. Someone sat at that table the night of April 14th, 1912. They never got up. Today, we opened the door to the room where time stopped, and nothing could have prepared us for what was left behind. Is greater than the Titanic sits in two pieces. Is greater than. The bow went down first, straight and hard, driving itself 30 feet into the ocean floor like a headstone marking its own grave. The stern twisted and fell separately. Scattered wreckage stretches for miles in every direction between them. Is greater than getting to B deck is not simple. Is greater than. The ROV moves through what was once the grand staircase entrance. The famous glass dome is long gone, collapsed inward on the night of the sinking. Now there is only open water where elegance used to live. The lights cut through the dark, and the dark pushes back. Is greater than. The corridors of B deck stretch ahead. Is greater than. These were not ordinary hallways. They were wide, carpeted, lit by electric light at a time when most of the world still used candles. First-class passengers walked these halls wearing jewelry worth more than most people earned in a lifetime. Is greater than. Now the carpet is gone, the light is gone, and the silence here is the kind that gets inside you. Is greater than. At the far end of the corridor, the door to room B52 comes into view. Is greater than. It is still closed. Is greater than. Still sealed exactly as it was left on the night of April 14th, 1912. Whatever happened inside that room stayed inside. No water current has disturbed it. No previous expedition came this far. Is greater than. The lock is corroded. The wood has swollen with age and pressure. Is greater than. But it has held. Is greater than. For 113 years, it has held. Is greater than. The question is, why? Is greater than. The lock breaks. Is greater than. Not dramatically, not with force, it simply gives. Like it has been waiting. Like something on the other side finally let go. Is greater than. The door swings inward. Is greater than. The silt that has gathered against it for over a century lifts into the water in a slow dark cloud. The ROV lights push through, and for the first time since 1912, light enters room B52. Is greater than. What we see stops everything. Is greater than. This was not just a cabin. This was a private parlor suite. The kind of accommodation that cost more to book for one crossing than a third-class passenger would earn in 5 years. Paneled walls. A marble fireplace. Velvet furniture that once came in deep burgundy and gold. Is greater than. The velvet is gone now, but the bones of the room remain. Is greater than. And so do other bones. Is greater than. To the right of the entrance, a private dining table sits exactly as it was left. 4 place settings. 4 silver cloches still covering plates that will never be eaten from. Crystal glasses stand upright in the sill as though a careful hand placed them there yesterday. Is greater than. But the chairs are not empty. Is greater than. At the far end of the table, a figure sits slumped forward. Arms resting on either side of a place setting. Head down. Still. The posture of someone who simply stopped mid-meal and never moved again. Is greater than. The iceberg struck at 11:40 p.m. Dinner in first class ran late that evening. Is greater than. They were still eating. Is greater than. On the mantelpiece above the fireplace, a clock rests on its side. The hands have not moved. They are frozen at exactly 2:20 a.m. The moment the Titanic's bow finally slipped beneath the surface for the last time, is greater than. This clock did not stop by accident. Is greater than someone set it down at that exact moment. Or it fell. Either way, time in this room has not moved since then. It has been 2:20 a.m. in room B52 for 113 years. Is greater than. Across from the fireplace, a large mirror catches the ROV lights. Is greater than. For just a moment, the reflection looks like a room with people still living in it. Is greater than. It does not feel like a wreck in here. Is greater than. It feels like an interruption. Is greater than. Like whoever lived here, simply stepped away, and fully intended to come back. Is greater than. They did not come back. Is greater than. And deeper inside the suite, past the parlor, through the door on the far wall, something else is waiting. Something that tells a very different story about the last hours inside room B52. Is greater than a story that is far darker than a frozen dinner table. Is greater than. The door on the far wall opens easier than the first. Is greater than. Whatever sealed the parlor did not reach this far. And that is the first sign that something went very wrong in this room. Is greater than. The private bedroom of room B52 is smaller than the parlor. But what it holds is larger than anything we expected. Is greater than. The bed frame is still intact, iron and wood, built to last. It has lasted, but the mattress is long gone. Dissolved into the silt that covers every surface in here like gray snow that never stops falling. Is greater than. That is not what pulls the eye. Is greater than. At the foot of the bed sits a wooden chest. Heavy. Bound in iron straps. The kind of chest that was built specifically to cross oceans. To survive rough seas. To protect what was inside at all costs. Is greater than. It did not survive this. Is greater than. The chest has burst open. Not from the outside. From the inside. The pressure changes as the Titanic sank would have done that. Forced the contents outward. And what spilled out into the silt of the Atlantic Ocean floor is something that takes a moment to fully understand. Is greater than gold bars. Small ones. The kind that could be carried by hand. Is greater than. And beside them, catching the ROV lights like tiny frozen stars. Diamonds. Loose stones scattered across the mud as though someone simply dropped a handful and walked away. Is greater than. But someone did not walk away. Is greater than. On the floor beside the chest. Reaching toward it. A figure lies face down in the silt. One arm extended. Fingers inches from the nearest gold bar. They did not let go willingly. The rising water took them exactly where they were. Refusing to leave without what they came for. Is greater than. The water won. Is greater than. It always wins. Is greater than. The dressing room sits just off the bedroom through a narrow doorway, and here the story shifts. Where the bedroom speaks of desperation, the dressing room speaks of something quieter. Something almost unbearable in its simplicity. Is greater than the vanity table still stands against the wall. Is greater than silver-handled brushes sit in a row. Perfume bottles with their glass still intact lean against the mirror frame. The mirror itself is cracked. Split diagonally, from corner to corner. But it still holds its reflection. Is greater than. In front of it, at the vanity chair, a figure sits upright. Is greater than hands resting in their lap. Is greater than. Around the finger bones of the left hand, a diamond necklace is wound twice. Not worn. Not clasped. Wound. Like it was being held on to rather than put on. Like in those final moments, letting go of it was simply not something that could be done. Is greater than. We do not judge that. Is greater than. Some things are hard to let go of, even at the end. Is greater than. The bathroom is the last room in this private suite, and we almost did not go in. Is greater than. The porcelain tub is intact, still white beneath a thin layer of silt. The fixtures are corroded beyond recognition, but the tub itself looks almost new. Is greater than almost. Is greater than. Inside it, curled on one side with knees drawn up toward the chest, is a figure. Small. Still. Tucked into the corner of the tub as though making themselves as small as possible. Is greater than. This was not someone who panicked. Is greater than. This was someone who made a choice. Who found the most enclosed, most protected space they could. Who lay down carefully, and waited. Is greater than. The water came anyway. Is greater than. Behind the bathroom door, half hidden beneath a layer of sediment, the wall safe sits slightly open. A skeletal hand rests against the door. Inside, dissolved, beyond recovery, the remains of what were once banknotes. A leather pouch. And nothing else. Is greater than. Whatever they were trying to reach in those final moments. Is greater than. It did not save them. Is greater than. Nothing in this room saved anyone. Is greater than. But further into the ship, beyond the private suites, the story of that night takes a different turn. Because not everyone in first class spent their final hours alone. Is greater than. Some of them gathered, and what they left behind is harder to look at than any of this. Is greater than. The private suites tell one kind of story. Is greater than. The facilities tell another. Is greater than. Because, while some passengers spent their final hours alone in their rooms, others went about their evening as though nothing was wrong. As though the largest ship ever built could not possibly be in any real danger. Is greater than. That is the part that is hardest to understand. Is greater than. The gymnasium on sea deck was state-of-the-art in 1912. Rowing machines, stationary bicycles, a mechanical horse, a mechanical camel. Equipment that wealthy passengers used each morning to maintain the kind of physical condition that separated them, in their minds, from everyone else on the ship. Is greater than. The gymnasium instructor was a man named T.W. Macaulay. Is greater than he was known for encouraging passengers to use the equipment even after the collision. Witnesses who survived reported that he was still in the gymnasium, helping people onto the mechanical equipment, well after 11:40 p.m. Is greater than he did not survive. Is greater than. The gymnasium today is a shadow of what it was. The wooden floors are gone. The ceiling has partially collapsed, but the mechanical camel still stands in the far corner, rusted, frozen mid-motion, locked into the same position it was in when the water finally reached this deck. Is greater than. And seated on it. Is greater than. Still upright, still positioned exactly as a rider would sit. Is greater than a figure that has not moved in 113 years. Is greater than. We do not stay long in the gymnasium. Is greater than. Some things are better left undisturbed. Is greater than. The Turkish baths sit deeper in the ship, and nothing prepares you for what has survived down here. While wood has rotted and metal has corroded, the tiles of the Turkish baths have defied everything the ocean has thrown at them. Is greater than blue, gold, intricate geometric patterns covering every wall and every surface. Is greater than. They still shine. Is greater than. It is one of the most breathtaking things in the entire wreck, a pocket of beauty preserved inside a grave. The craftsmanship of those tiles was built to last, and it has lasted. Through the sinking, through 113 years of freezing dark water, through pressure that has crushed steel beams like paper, is greater than the tiles remain, is greater than the cooling room adjoins the main bath chamber. It was designed as a place to rest after the steam. Teak lounge chairs, soft lighting, attendants on hand to bring whatever was needed, is greater than one of the lounge chairs is still in position against the wall, is greater than, and on it, reclined at a comfortable angle, arms resting at the sides, a figure lies in a position of complete stillness, is greater than, not collapsed, not contorted, is greater than resting, is greater than. It is the most peaceful scene in the entire wreck, and somehow, that makes it the most disturbing. Because this person did not die in panic. They did not die reaching for gold, or curled in a corner. Is greater than. They simply reclined. Is greater than. And the ocean came to them where they lay. Is greater than. Whether they were sleeping. Whether they had lost consciousness from the cold. Whether they simply chose to meet the end in comfort, rather than chaos. Is greater than. We will never know. Is greater than. The swimming bath sits at the far end of this deck. It was one of the first heated swimming pools ever installed on an ocean liner. Passengers paid extra just to use it. The pool itself is now a pitch-black rectangle cut into the floor. The water that fills it is not the heated sea water of 1912. It is the cold black water of the deep Atlantic. Is greater than. At the edge of the pool, legs dangling over the side into the dark water below, a figure sits with their back to us. Is greater than still. Silent. Is greater than. Staring down into a darkness that has no bottom. Is greater than. We call out with the ROV lights. A sweep of the beam across the figure. Is greater than. No response. Of course, no response. Is greater than. But for just a moment, in that dark silent place, 3 miles beneath the surface of the Atlantic. Is greater than. It felt like an intrusion. Is greater than. Like we had interrupted something private. Is greater than. We move on quickly. Is greater than. Because the upper decks are waiting. And up there, in the social spaces where first-class passengers gathered together on that final night, the story of April 14th, 1912, takes its most haunting turn yet. Is greater than. There is something about the social spaces that hits differently. Is greater than. The private suites speak of individuals, of personal choices made alone in the dark. But up here, in the places where people gather together on that final night, the weight of it multiplies. Is greater than. Because they were not alone. Is greater than. They had each other. Is greater than. And it did not matter. Is greater than the veranda cafe sat at the forward end of B deck. It was designed to feel like a Parisian street cafe transplanted onto the ocean. Real ivy climbed the walls. Wicker furniture. White tablecloths. The kind of place where first-class passengers took afternoon tea and pretended the Atlantic Ocean outside the windows was simply a pleasant backdrop. Is greater than. The ivy is gone now. Is greater than. In its place, sea plants have taken root in the same spots where the original vines once climbed, nature filling the gaps that nature created. The wicker furniture has dissolved, but 2 things remain standing in the far corner of the cafe. Is supérieur à table. Is greater than. And 2 chairs. Is greater than. The tea service on the table is intact. A pot. 2 cups. A small plate that once held something. The cups are upright. The pot is still positioned in the center of the table, as though a careful hand placed it there moments ago. Is greater than. Across from each other at that table, 2 figures sit. Is greater than. Facing each other, is greater than whatever conversations they were having on the night of April 14th, 1912 has never been finished. Whatever was said last between these two people, those were the last words either of them ever spoke, is greater than we move on before the silence becomes too loud, is greater than the first-class smoking room was the domain of men in 1912. Women were not permitted. It was a place of mahogany walls, stained glass windows, and card tables where fortunes changed hands over the course of an evening. Is greater than the mahogany is gone. The stained glass is gone. It's greater than but the card tables remain. Is greater than 4 of them, bolted to the floor, exactly where they were placed when the ship launched. And around the table nearest to the entrance, 4 figures sit in a circle. Hands, no longer visible. But the positions are unmistakable. Is greater than they were playing cards. Is greater than in the center of the table, a mound of sediment has settled in a way that suggests something was piled there. Chips. Coins. Something that represented stakes in a game that no one would ever finish. Is greater than the Titanic struck the iceberg at 11:40 p.m. Is greater than witnesses who survived reported that men were still in the smoking room playing cards well after midnight, after the lifeboats had already begun loading. After it had become clear to many on board that the ship was going down. Is greater than they kept playing. Is greater than right up until the moment they could not anymore. Is greater than there is a kind of courage in that, or denial. Perhaps both. The line between the two is thinner than most people want to admit. Is greater than the barber shop sits just down the corridor from the smoking room. Is greater than, and this is the room that stops us completely. Is greater than, not because of what happened here, but because of how ordinary it looks. The barber chairs are bolted to the floor, still upright, still angled slightly as a barber would position them for a customer. The footrests are still extended. Is greater than, on the floor beside the nearest chair, a pair of scissors lies in the silt. Is greater than, and in the chair itself, is greater than a figure sits upright, head back slightly, in exactly the position a person takes when they are settling in for a cut. Relaxed, comfortable, completely still. Is greater than the barber is not there. Is greater than only the customer, waiting in a chair bolted to the floor of a ship at the bottom of the Atlantic, waiting for a service that will never be completed. In a moment of routine so mundane that it should not exist here among all this tragedy. Is greater than, but it does. Is greater than, and somehow that is the detail that makes everything else real. Not the gold, not the diamonds, not the frozen dinner table. Is greater than a person, sitting in a barber chair, waiting. Is greater than, it could be anyone. Is greater than it could be you. Is greater than, but not everyone in these halls was here for leisure. Further into the ship, in a part of the Titanic that rarely gets talked about, a different kind of story was unfolding on that night. One built not on wealth or routine, but on duty. Is greater than, and sacrifice. Is greater than. The hospital is not on any tourist map of the Titanic. Is greater than. Nobody talks about it. Nobody films it. It sits deep in the lower decks, away from the grand staircase, away from the suites and the cafes and the smoking rooms. It was never meant to be seen by most passengers. Is greater than it was meant to be needed by very few. Is greater than, on the night of April 14th, 1912, it was needed by many. Is greater than, the medical bay on the Titanic was modest, by the standards of the rest of the ship. No marble, no velvet, no crystal, Just white walls. Metal beds bolted to the floor in 2 rows. A small dispensary at the far end, stocked with the medical supplies of the era, is greater than. The white is gone now. Everything here is the same gray-brown of deep ocean sediment. Is greater than. But the beds remain. Is greater than all of them. Is greater than. And they are not empty. Is greater than. We move slowly through the room. The ROV lights sweep across each bed in turn. Each one tells the same story. Someone was placed here. Someone was cared for here. In the chaos of that night, when the corridors above were filling with panic, and the lifeboats were already pulling away from the ship, someone brought the sick and the injured down here. Is greater than. And someone stayed with them. Is greater than. On the floor between 2 beds, a figure lies face up, arms at the sides. The posture is not one of panic or struggle. It is deliberate, composed. And the uniform this figure is wearing, still partially preserved in the sediment around the bones, identifies them clearly. Is greater than a nurse. Is greater than she did not leave. Is greater than. When the lifeboats were loading, when survival was still possible, when every instinct would have been screaming to get out, and get up, and get to the deck. Is greater than she stayed. Is greater than. Lying on the floor between her patients, right where she was needed, right where she chose to be. Is greater than. There are no words adequate for that. Is greater than. So we leave the hospital in silence. Is greater than. And as we pull back through the corridors of the Titanic, back through the social spaces, and the private suites and the sealed chambers, something begins to shift in how this wreck feels. Is greater than. Because nature has been here the whole time. Is greater than quietly, patiently, doing what nature always does. Is greater than. In the remains of the first-class dining saloon, a crab moves slowly across a silver soup tureen, making its home in something that once cost more than most families earned in a year. Unbothered, unimpressed, completely indifferent to what it has claimed as its own, is greater than. In the corridor outside the sealed suite, a diamond necklace lies in the open sill, unburied, visible, 3 feet from a passing fish that does not slow down, does not notice, does not care, is greater than. In the gymnasium, sea anemones have attached themselves to the mechanical camel, growing in the same slow, patient way they grow on rocks and reefs and the bones of the ocean floor, is greater than. To them, the Titanic is simply a reef, is greater than a structure, a surface, a place to live, is greater than. The gold means nothing. The diamonds mean nothing. The first-class suites and the Turkish bath tiles and the silver cloches on the dining table is greater than nothing. Is greater than. The ocean absorbed all of it. The wealth and the poverty. The courage and the cowardice. The nurse who stayed and the passenger who died clutching gold bars on a bedroom floor is greater than. It took all of them, exactly the same way, is greater than, without judgment, without distinction, without mercy, is greater than, and it is still here, is greater than, still taking, is greater than. The Titanic loses approximately 1 inch of steel to corrosion every year. The boat that drove itself into the ocean floor on the night of the sinking will eventually collapse completely. The corridors we have just moved through, the sealed suite, the card tables, the barber chair, is greater than, all of it will be gone, is greater than, within our lifetime, is greater than, but before it disappears entirely, before the ocean finishes what it started on April 14th, 1912, there is one place on this ship we have not yet entered. is greater than one door that makes the lock on room B52 look simple, is greater than one sealed section of the Titanic that no expedition has ever successfully accessed, is greater than, and what the sonar imaging shows is waiting behind that door, is greater than, is not what anyone expected to find, is greater than, the lights of the ROV begin to pull back, is greater than slowly, the way you leave a church, or a cemetery, with deliberate quiet, with the awareness that the space you are moving through belongs to something larger than you, is greater than, the corridors of B-Deck shrink back into darkness behind us, is greater than, room B-52 disappears into the black, is greater than, the dinner table, the stopped clock, the figure at the vanity, the nurse on the hospital floor, the two people sharing a cup of tea that never got finished. All of it fades, is greater than, all of it returns to the silence it has kept for 113 years, is greater than, these are not ruins, is greater than, that word is too clean, too distant, too architectural, is greater than, these are graves, every corridor, every sealed chamber, every room we entered tonight, all of it is a grave. And we moved through it the way you move through any grave, with the understanding that you are a visitor, that this place does not belong to you, that the people who left these things behind never intended for anyone to see them, is greater than, we saw them anyway, is greater than, and we will carry that with us, is greater than the ROV ascends. The wreck grows smaller beneath us. The lights catch one last glimpse of the bow railing before the dark swallows it completely. A majority gone, is greater than, 3 miles of black water close over the Titanic like a curtain, is greater than, but before we surface, is greater than, before this is over, is greater than. There is something the sonar picked up on the descent that we have not addressed, is greater than a signal, coming from inside the sealed section of the cargo hold, deep in the bow, below the waterline of the wreck itself, in a part of the ship that has never been opened, never been filmed, never been explored by any expedition in the 40 years since the Titanic was found, is greater than. The signal is not mechanical, is greater than. It is not the ship settling, not metal contracting in the cold, is greater than. The analysts who reviewed the sonar data used one word to describe it, is greater than rhythmic, is greater than. Something in the deepest part of the Titanic is producing a rhythmic signal, is greater than. And it started the moment our ROV lights hit the hull of room B-52, is greater than, we are going back down.